And that has great import in terms of how we treat each other, the way we treat each other. I love the anonymity of my car. You probably do as well. When I'm in my car, I can call people stupid and moron. I can yell at them, and it doesn't do anything to me or them. It's great. I know none of you do that. That's solely my problem, right? Now, maybe you don't do that, but I think I could probably state this and be pretty certain that I'm right. That there is a group of people that everybody in this room, there's somebody that you're thinking of that group irritates you, right? Maybe it's their ideology, or maybe it's just that guy that constantly leaves his towels on the bench at the gymnasium instead of putting them in the laundry hamper. Or maybe it's your husband who does the same thing with his socks. I'm sure that never happens, right? And you fume and you say things about their heritage under your breath. Don't you? James 3 says this, "No human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God." And this is what we're doing when we show disdain for someone. When we yell at them or we call them an idiot, when we fume about them, James calls that a restless evil and a deadly poison. What you say about and to others matters. Because each person, says James, is made in the image of God. C.S. Lewis preached a very famous sermon called The Weight of Glory. You've probably heard excerpts from it before. In it, he says there are no ordinary people, because he understands the importance of the image of God. He goes on and he says, "You have never talked to a mere mortal. Nations and civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit. They are either immortal horrors or everlasting splendors." Lewis is saying every person who comes across your path should be treated with sacredness, with reverence, with respect, with a concern for their individuality, a kindness that never writes them off. There should never be an impatience or an eye roll, right? Because we consider every person that we encounter to be valuable. If only I could live that way, right? But of course I don't. I consistently fail to recognize the image of God in its everyday appearance because I see it every day. And you know the maxim, familiarity breeds contempt. I know these people. I see them every day. They aren't royalty. Give me a break. And so we act out of our familiarity. We act out of our contempt. Why can't he get the stupid socks into the hamper? We don't even own the image of God in ourselves when we do that. If we are all bearers of God's glory, then everyone is worthy of respect and honor, including myself. And I dishonor myself when I treat image bearers with contempt, because contempt is found nowhere in God's character, which means I'm not bearing the image of God every time I act with contempt. Every person is worthy of being treated with grace and dignity. Is it what we want to be treated with? Of course we do. But do we give it? Or is your first response a bitter demand to get all of those things and not to give it? But look at the Christian heritage as our example in terms of how we ought to be living in the world. Back in the 1st and 2nd century, 3rd century of Rome, did you know that back then infanticide was legal if the infant was a girl? You could just dump her out in the woods or in the river. It was no big deal. She was a girl. And so the early church, though, did something about that. You know what they did? Whenever a girl was dumped, they would go rescue her. they would adopt her into their family. The early church believed that a human being's worth and value was defined by God. And so when a girl was abandoned, the Christians would take her in. Do you know also at that time there was about 2, maybe 3 million people in the city of Rome, as the largest city in the world probably in that day. And so Rome, because they were tightly packed together, it was a very dense city. Rome experienced lots of plagues throughout the centuries. And they would kill tens of thousands of people. And they would lay low tens of thousands more. Do you know what the Christians did? They would go into the city to serve those who were sick. Going into the city while the wealthy are streaming out of the city saying, "Let the poor die, we're going to the countryside." They would go in. And as a result of these actions and a myriad more that I can't go into, I don't have time for, Christians put the rest of the culture to shame because of their belief in the value of human life. Because of that belief, they changed all of society's perception about human dignity. It wasn't because they argued better or were louder. They simply lived a life in a way that comforted people. They loved human beings, all of them. If you only believe in capacities or some other trumped-up approach to human value, the circle can only contract in terms of who has value. It will never get larger. It just gets smaller and smaller, and fewer people are protected. But when you believe in the image of God, the circle of protected life always gets larger to include everyone. It's our misperceptions that get confronted and changed. Do you see how incredibly crucial and important the understanding of the image of God is? So then we have to ask the question, why? Why does he put the image of God? Why does he place the imago Dei into us? The purpose of the image of God is reflection and representation. Go with me on a little thought exercise. If I were to take a canvas and I were to paint your picture on it, is that a good likeness? Well, if you know me and you know my lack of artistic ability, you would say, no, I'm probably not even going to recognize myself in that picture, and that's true. I'm a terrible artist. But what if I were to what if Russian realist Ivan Kromskoy were to paint your portrait? Do we have that image? Can we throw it? Yeah, there it is. That's a painting. That's unreal, right? To be able to get that kind of detail into it. You see, that kind of a likeness is accurate, isn't it? And when you look at that, people for centuries will know what that person, we don't even know who she is. The title of the painting is Unknown Woman. But people for centuries will know what that woman looked like. If she were to show up here, we would go, well, actually, she'd be a skeleton, it'd be weird, but let's go with the example. If you were to show up here, we'd be like, that's you. Because the image is uncanny. And so that's what God is saying here in Genesis chapter 1. In verse 26, he says, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness." So if we want to know what God is like, supposedly we can go to humanity to see him because we're made in his image and likeness. You realize how incredible that thought is? Do you image God? Because of what it means to be made in the image of God, we are supposed to be able to accurately reflect him, to reflect his character. So God is saying in Genesis 1, let us, by the way, there's that eternal relationship again. You might want to call it the plurality of royalty, but I kind of think he's actually talking in terms of three. Let us create human beings to reflect our glory, to reflect our goodness, our love, our character. And so God is saying, I have made you like a mirror so that you're capable of reflecting my character. And to the degree that you reflect my character properly, you will represent me to the whole of creation, to everything in the world. And as a result of that, all of life will flourish. Those are actually God's intentions. We see them in verse 28. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over it." Our purpose is to reflect the glory of the unseen God in a visible, tangible way. We extend God's glory by reflecting it, and it brings life to everything that we're involved with. That's its purpose. So God is saying to humanity in this verse, fill the world with my image. Do it well, and the entire creation is going to flourish.